Hello everyone, another video here on the channel. I ask those who aren't subscribed yet to please subscribe and leave a like. If you enjoy the content, share it and feel free to use the comment section as always. And just a reminder to everyone that my content is and always will be 100% free. Before we get into today's topic, just a quick recommendation. So yesterday on Sunday, Koruha and Kirigaya did an amazing live stream. They're only going to leave the live up for one day on Koruha's channel for obvious reasons, but it will be posted on alternative platforms anyway, so I'll leave it there for you. In the pinned comment, you'll find the link to Koruha's channel and the link to Yanni Kirigaya's channel, right? These are two guys who are doing brilliant work. Koruha has been my friend for a while now. We talk, we have direct contact, And Kirigaya recently joined our circle, so to speak, and he's a very welcome addition, very smart, and has been helping the community a lot. So with this issue of the male-female dynamic from a biological point of view, so both Koruja's channel and Kirigaya's will be linked here. Today we're going to talk about a second part of a video I made some time ago, and it was a video that got good engagement. People watched it, commented, but I think it was too short and there were some things missing, okay? That video was already one of the first more nihilistic videos on the channel, although for some the channel as a whole is already quite black pill list, but that one was already a bit darker, let's put it that way. So today is going to be the second part. Then look, I'm not trying to be mysterious or throw out any bait or anything like that, but this one is going to be worse, okay? Because the situation is much deeper than I thought it was, which at least today I was able to see more clearly. I already had some idea, but I started to notice certain behaviors and some stimuli and rewards in the environment, which is the main focus of the channel. And the thing is, it has spiraled to such a point that it's almost irreversible, this invisibility of average people in society. It's rather sad for guys to realize that today the overwhelming majority of men are rejected by women for absolutely any reason. I'm not going to call this whole dog thing, being a pet mom, whatever, a coping mechanism, because in fact there really is a feminine emptiness where this whole thing of being a pet mom, having a four-legged child and so on, and not having a real family, it does affect her, yes, from time to time, but it's somewhere in the middle. Among women, they're all depressed, men are laughing at the pet moms, while at the same time, there's something that people in the United States and England, especially in the US, have already started noticing, the issue of the dog pill. What is the dog pill? It's this thing where women are preferring dogs over going out or dating average men or the men they have access to whenever they want. Because, as has already been said here anyway, you can actually observe this in reality. As I mentioned in my last video, in my opinion, the most sincere and honest way to respect the listener, the subscriber, actually there are two ways. One is what Davy always said, which I completely agree with. Shout out to Davy from What is Life. I'll also leave the link to his channel in the pinned comment. It's about not treating you as customers, not treating anyone here as a customer, but rather as a subscriber, as a listener, as someone I can exchange ideas with, as colleagues, so we can chat in the comments, or when I join live streams on other channels, we can joke around in the chat, and so on. It's about not treating people like customers and saying things that are truly connected to reality. So about this dog pill thing, women are really into this dog thing and taking lots of pictures with dogs all the time, everywhere, calling them the love of their life and so on. And they would much rather be with their little dogs or their cats any day. People make a lot of jokes about cats, but at least here in Brazil, I think that at least among younger women, they prefer dogs over cats. That's the impression I get. So now, one thing you'll notice, which you already know, it's common knowledge, is that women really do prefer them. To occasionally hook up with the Chad, meaning once or twice a month spend a night with the most outstanding guy, or for those who are already looking for long-term provision, try to catch a rich guy, a millionaire, some super heir, rather than be with an average man. So, but there's something happening that I want to talk about. That sometimes men have given up on bets, that men have put down their bets or their bat, depending on the region of Brazil you live in, that the guys have given up, at least the guys, the so-called red-pilled ones, they don't. In a way, they're becoming more and more disillusioned, even with dating, right? When it comes to marriage, having kids with Bitar, the guys have pretty much given up on bets for good, but even with dating, they're getting more and more discouraged too. But this is happening with women too. It's just that when a man gives up, the average guy says, man, society is impossible, it's unbearable, there's no way to deal with this. It's simply intolerable to have a monogamous relationship these days. Guys start focusing on themselves. They go to the gym, they work out, they read books, they pursue their own hobbies. Unfortunately, here in Brazil, because of cultural and financial reasons, it's not possible to have men's fraternities. So, for example, even though in the United States you have a staggering number of incels today and a lot of troubled people there, you already have 27% of men who are virgins between 18 and 30 years old, which is a disastrous situation. Still, guys there have a lot of hobbies, and traveling within their own country is cheap. There, the purchasing power of the average American ranges from 8 to 13 times higher, compared to Brazilians who do the same things Americans do there. So, like, guys there kind of have somewhere to turn, whether it's through games or clubs anyway. It's an event. Guys there are able to close themselves off in niches and bubbles and end up having fun. Here in Brazil, you can do that too, but mainly in the countryside, in the big cities. There are lots of people with goals leaving home and who are basically stuck in that job, alienated. It's even a bit Marxist in the sense that the person barely questions anything, or they're in that bubble, that thing that totally monotonous and stagnant. Many times, a lot of these guys end up marrying literally the first woman who comes along playing house, doing the whole my house, my life thing, thinking it's going to be better than what they have. The guy ends up living a worse life. So, even though there are disagreements among content creators on various subjects and themes, one thing that's a given for everyone, one thing that's unanimous in the male sphere, is that only personal development can improve your life. So that's how men are. They left Betis to go out, and women when they hand over Betis for a relationship. And dating, right? At least with guys they consider inferior, and they think almost all guys are inferior, whether it's in genetic terms, financial terms, status, or strong emotions. Very few guys actually attract women, right? And there's this thing. The thing about the winter is this. Some women won't suffer from the winter because they really will lower their standards when they're 55, 40. Others won't, okay? But you'll see a lot of MILFs in Brazil in the future, which is what we call BMWs, right? Those are the women who keep up with their cosmetic procedures, stay on top of their workouts, stick to their diets, basically training hard. They're 37 years old, let's say, and they're still looking great. These women from the 1990s, when they reach that age, you're still going to see a lot of these older BMW women. She might be older, but she's still a BMW. So a lot of guys, a lot of Micainhas will see a chance to be with a woman like that. But many of them aren't going to lower their standards, no. They'd rather stay single even if it means facing a cold winter. They just don't care. And that's where this whole dog thing comes in, the whole dog pill issue. So nowadays, you see in society the way women give up. It's somewhat more subtle, yeah, a bit. The more indirect it is, you have to read between the lines with women. With men, you already see the guy saying, I'm done with dating, I'm focusing on myself. Men are more direct, more obvious, more logical. Women aren't like that. So now comes a bit of a certain humor, a darker kind of thing, something more complicated that seems funny, what I'm about to say here and all. But if you stop to analyze it coldly, it's a collapse. In fact, okay? Women today, folks, they're preferring to stay with their dog rather than date a guy who's like a 6 or a 6.5. They're preferring to call a bottle of wine their bae. You can see it on Valentine's Day, or even now on Valentine's Day, which is celebrated in February. Women posting photos with a bottle of wine or a glass of gin and tonic, calling it their bae, right? In other words, a drink, a bottle of alcohol, a glass of something to drink. That means more than the thousands of guys who would date them, right? Risotto, okay? Risotto, it's a big thing in Brazil now too. Out of nowhere, Brazil has turned into a country of risotto lovers. Where do you think this whole risotto thing comes from? Girlfriends, right? So, women would much rather get together with each other and make risotto than be with average guys. If you ask a woman about this, she'll say, of course I'd rather be with my friends. All the men are no good. Men are all players. Understand one thing. I've talked a lot in my video about the false scarcity of men in the market. Every perception women have about negative male behavior, that is, the things men do that end up hurting women emotionally, comes only from the chads and bad boys of society. So women only get involved with about 1 to 3% of men in Brazil. In some less unequal regions, it's up to 5%. In other words, you have 5% of the guys who are enjoying the whole party. And I say this because I've seen it a lot, I've experienced it a lot myself. So I'm being as honest and straightforward with you as possible here. And then women come with this talk. Men are no good, men do this, men do that. There's no such thing as a woman who gets fooled by accident. It's like the guy who joins the gym and tells the trainer, oh, I don't want to get huge. The trainer just laughs at him, right? There's no way a guy gets huge at the gym by accident. For you to get huge, to become like Cariani, Polo Musi, or Balestrin, you have to want to look like that. No one gets huge by accident. And no woman gets fooled by a player by accident either. Why is that? Because it's exactly those strong emotions. And here, I'm not talking about blaming the victim. in more serious cases where there's financial fraud and so on. That's a whole different story. I'm saying that what actually made the woman fall for the Tinder scammer, because you say that and he says, are you blaming the victim? No. What I'm saying is that from the very first contact, right there, from the moment that man enters her life, those men who end up messing with women's minds, who are those few guys who have the gift of being a player, or the guy who's such a jerk that he'll never be monogamous anyway. What actually attracted the woman to these guys was their personality. So that's just talk to fool people. When a woman says, I didn't know he was like that, that has nothing to do with it. Sure, there will be one or another case, an exception, a disappointment, where the guy seems like a saint, or a more straight-laced guy who might shock society with some kind of behavior, but that's very, 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 very rare, really. The rule is that they're attracted precisely to, Alita was already saying this in his works back in 2005, because women are attracted to the mysterious ones, the cold ones, the insensitive ones. So like women end up getting frustrated with this and then they go make risotto, watch Netflix make some leak risotto, a half-hearted stroganoff and post hashtag wife material. So the desperation among women is becoming more and more obvious in society, but it's a very hypocritical kind of desperation. It's a very hypocritical kind of desperation, just like a lot of male behaviors are also hypocritical. Like a lot of guys say, oh, the thing is to hook up and ghost, whatever. And sometimes the guy actually has a deeper emotional need, which, even though it's connected to his libido, to wanting a more serious monogamous relationship, he won't admit it, you know? So, like, there's nothing wrong with not being the big player or whatever. The problem a lot of times is the hypocrisy of saying you only want that when in reality you want a serious relationship. There's nothing wrong with wanting a serious relationship and society being totally dysfunctional so you can't get one. The problem is knowing the environment is bad and still going in anyway. In a relationship full of red flags and messing things up, you know? So, like, you can't really control your desire for things you don't have. We still are. It's like Koruha is saying there to one of the biggest creators from our circle, right? He's really hammering on that point. We men were biologically programmed to be like bonobos, simps, and do everything for women. So when you start using logic, when you start thinking a little, you can avoid situations where in the medium or long term you might get into trouble. But this thing of seeing a beautiful woman at the gym and losing your mind or ending up making a comment, bragging to a woman at work or in a group of friends, etc. You might end up saying something stupid by accident that you shouldn't have said. That's going to happen. The difference is that a lot of guys are getting into much more serious trouble with alimony, with single mothers, with divorce issues, with guys destroying themselves emotionally in relationships. From the very beginning, he knows it's not going to work out, just like the woman also knows that a relationship with a player isn't going to work out. So, like, society is this huge trap that's constantly trying to screw you over, and you have to know how to escape it, you know? You have to know how to escape because things are really getting, like, unbearable, right? It's becoming absolutely unbearable. But when you start to understand some of these mechanisms, like why women have certain behaviors, it all becomes pretty obvious, right? Even though human unpredictability can always, the element of unpredictability in this case can always surprise any of us. This whole thing with women, the risotto, the dog, the wine, Netflix, right? Loving their own company, saying they're marriage material, doing things in the name of morals and good manners, saying they'll stay home this Saturday night, right? Those mainstream TV series too. So anyway, these trends too, like post a photo, whatever. Women are finding a lot more fun in these things than in opening their DMs, and there are a bunch of guys in there who would make excellent boyfriends for them, right? Guys who would be caring, guys who are in a good place, often middle class, guys who wanted to build a life together. There are plenty of guys like that in Brazil. It seems like there are a lot of wimps out there, a bunch of goofy guys and all that. There are still some guys who still think with that same old mindset. Like back in 2007, 2010, when the chances of getting screwed over were lower, even though the chances of ending up getting screwed over by a woman in the long run were always higher than lower, okay? But nowadays, it's getting smaller and smaller. It's becoming more and more like a lottery ticket. So, like, even though I've already made about 3 videos here saying that I do recognize that there are exceptional relationships, okay? Exceptional people, neither men nor women. Everyone is ruled by biological instincts that can end up causing an emotional catastrophe at any moment. However, when it comes to relationships, there are some people who can hold it together. There are exceptional relationships. I mentioned there that it's around 5% to 10%, 5% according to Hakun, and I agree with him. So imagine me here with almost 40,000 subscribers giving advice to my listeners, even though everyone does what they want with their lives. I'm not anyone's guru or oracle here, but it would be really shameless of me to say, oh no, I think you should definitely try for a long-term relationship. Then 5%, about 2,000 people do well, and the other 38,000 end up screwed just the same. Dom Sandro says, are you crazy? You'll never hear me say that. I do recognize that there are functional relationships, right? That there are some relationships where both the boyfriend and girlfriend or the husband and wife have a really good harmony between them. But anyway, right? It's the minority. It's what you all are seeing out there, right? Everyone's already said, oh, I know a couple that's cool and all, whatever. But I know 10 of my friends who are married. They're all overweight, screwed, unhappy, you name it. The last video I made about stressed out married people and frustrated too. People from all over Brazil started commenting, saying that this is really what's happening. These guys know almost everything. One of them says, man, I went to play soccer with my friends and they're all calling their wives boss, and their wives are unattractive, out of shape, overweight, you name it. It's about men's emotional attachment, men's neediness. It's a really bizarre thing. It's really, really bizarre, honestly. So, as we get to the final stretch here, the thing is, average guys will keep being invisible to these women. That's how it is. Like I said, some of them, when they hit 35 or 40, they're in the same situation. It's like a team that's losing 1-0, and then there's a corner kick, so they even send the goalkeeper into the box, you know? So they need to score. The goalkeeper goes up to the box to try to score. They literally send the goalkeeper forward, and then they'll go for anyone. But a lot of them would rather just stay on the sidelines. 1,000. You can't even say 1 in 1,000 because many won't even have kids, right? But a lot of them will just end up as those older single women. Girl, they're going to stay there, living from one sugar daddy to another, sometimes lowering their standards, sometimes staying the same. Epifania already said it. They just stay in temporary monogamous relationships with someone who fills their emotional void. So that's the market we have right now. Women preferring risotto, dogs, cats, Instagram stories, Netflix, Amazon Prime, you name it, stroganoff, leak something or other. Women are choosing all that over checking their DMs and giving a chance to an average guy. So a regular guy today who wants a long-term relationship basically has 3 options. The first is to jump into the first relationship that comes along, like a bad soccer defender who just kicks the ball wherever his nose is pointing, and have more than a 95% chance of getting screwed either through a divorce or a marriage where he ends up stuck in a house he cannot afford, staying with his wife just so the bank does not repossess it. So that's the first option. It's getting into what Dom Sandro calls getting screwed. Just get screwed. The second is for the guy to just pull his team off the field and live with temporary monogamies, short relationships maybe, or something like that, and give up on the idea of marrying, living together, and having kids in this world of the age of slaves, which Coruja described very well. And the third option is for the guy to keep trying to find his custom, as Halkun used to say, to try to find his unicorn until he does. And there are a lot of guys like that. I was surprised. There are a lot of guys, they're black-pilled over there in the United States and England, because this way of thinking is also present in England. I was checking out Itue's channel. I went to check out some things he said from the people who comment there and from some forums. There are a lot of guys like that too. They're still at it, still trying, and that's fine. The guy can try to find a woman he can't talk to. A goody two-shoes. I'm not even going to say this in a pejorative way. I'm going to speak a bit more seriously now, okay? Yeah, not to mess things up too much, but the guy can, in fact, sometimes find his compatible match there. It's possible. Is it democratic for everyone? Definitely not. So, like, there will be guys who want to take that risk. I've already said that I don't make moral judgments about anyone, right? But at least these guys, they, in theory, right, they know very well what to discard there, what they see as a red flag, you know? Hopefully they manage to, since in case they actually end up with someone. It's a really bleak scenario, honestly, for the majority who still dream of having a relationship, of building something together, of having a good life. Back when it was just 2 people, something you used to see even before Instagram and before social media, even though many relationships still fell apart back then too, they also ended. So it's not like the past was all roses, but it was more manageable. The game was more playable, let's put it that way, right? When I share the story of my awakening, I'll give some examples and things I experienced back then, which nowadays are unimaginable, you know, in 2007, 2010, 2012, you know. So, and the Generation X folks, the Furia crowd, those guys, they have stories from the 1990s, right? Because I was a kid in the 1990s, I'm Generation Y. So these people have stories from the 90s that, my God, when they talk about them, it's just unimaginable nowadays, right? So today the game has changed a lot. The bar is set really high. And I think that if a man doesn't realize that a lousy risotto is worth more than he is, right? Today, the average Brazilian man needs to understand that women are seeing much more. Honestly, if she prefers a cat risotto, Netflix, and a gin and tonic over him, and he still wants to keep insisting on this, then I just go with the Dom Sandrismo approach to wrap up the video. You want to mess up your own life? Go ahead, mess it up, ruin yourself. A big hug to everyone.